So they're freaking out, and this is all about what comes after Trump. This is all about hijacking the MAGA movement for their alt-right neo-isolationist viewpoint, and we've got to stop them, because I don't want them to hijack Reagan's Republican Party, and I don't want them to hijack Donald Trump's Republican Party.
This is Roger Zakheim, director of the Reagan Institute and host of Reaganism. Welcome. We're excited today to have as our guest, a repeat guest, Marc Thiessen. Marc, of course, is a columnist of the Washington Post, a fellow at American Enterprise Institute, and a Fox News contributor. Welcome back, Marc.
Good to be with you, Roger.
Well, today we have you on the show to talk about the fight within the right that's emerged over the past, 10 days or so, thanks to Tucker Carlson, the far-right neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, and the reaction of the CEO of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts. You've been writing about it, tweeting about it, podcasting about it, and I don't want to miss out to get your take on all of this. It's very important.
Got a column coming out on it this week.
Okay, well, we'll look for it. The time is recording. We get ready for a Thiessen column on the subject. That's great in the Washington Post. But one of the things that's come out as a positive here, as you've been hitting the world of X and other social media, is someone tried to attack you, Marc, for being a neocon. Tell us about your response to that attack, which, again, for me, that's a compliment, I think for you too, but they meant it as an attack. What was your response?
Yeah, I said I'm a Ron-con. Reagan, that's I think that's what we got to start calling us Reagan conservatives, the Ron-cons. And there's a branch of that that could be Don-cons, because Donald Trump is completely out of step with, as your polls have shown, is completely out of step with these alt-right lunatics. One of the things that ticks me off the most about all these people who are running around saying, we got to stop fighting amongst ourselves, and we got to focus on the left and stop fighting amongst ourselves. And it's funny how that whole idea disappears when they're talking about warmongers,
yes,
and neocons and all that. Those, we got to purge those. We can let Nick Fuentes in the tent and the neo-Nazis, but the neocons can't let them in. And what this shows is a lot of it is, I think what's happened here, Roger, is that the alt-right, whatever they're calling themselves these days,
woke
the post-liberal
right,
right,
the woke right too, yep,
woke right, post-liberal right, whatever the hell it is they are freaked out because of Operation Midnight Hammer. Mm-hmm. I think that that
actually was a breaking point. Of course, famously, Tucker Carlson thought he was going to be able to pressure President Trump away from his inner Ron-con or Don-con, and be the isolationist that they thought he would become. And, of course, President Trump is not that at all.
No, he's not even close. I mean, you think about the first term, okay? Bombed Syria twice for using chemical weapons on its own people. Launched a cyber attack on St. Petersburg on the troll farm that was interfering in our elections. Killed hundreds of Wagner fighters in Syria. Killed Qasem Soleimani, and then told the Ayatollah Khamenei that if you retaliate against Americans, I'll kill you. Right? Then second term, Operation Midnight Hammer. Bombing Venezuelan gunboats, threatening to unleash the military on Nigeria if they don't stop killing. Where's the isolationism? I'm looking for signs of isolationism anywhere. Where are they?
Hard to find. Maybe in some national defense strategy being dreamed up inside the Pentagon. Maybe that's the only place you're going to find it, and questionable whether that's actually going to be something that the president will sign up for. Yeah. I completely agree with that.
So they're freaking out, and this is all about what comes after Trump. This is all about hijacking the MAGA movement for their alt-right neo-isolationist viewpoint, and we've got to stop them, because I don't want them to hijack Reagan's Republican Party, and I don't want them to hijack Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Amen. And you just gave a bunch of examples on sort of the tippity end of the spear when it comes to national defense and national security, but it's true on the economic scene. It's true in engagement of allies. I mean, you just look at the president's trip to the Indo-Pacific and what he did in Japan and in Korea. This is not someone who can't tell the difference between an ally and an adversary. It's not someone who is seeking to, interprets America first as America alone without working with partners. I mean, the way he engaged with the new Japanese prime minister, this is someone who clearly thinks that America should be leading in every region of the world, be it militarily, economically, politically. And I would not have spoken with this confidence in January. But it just playing out over. Well, okay? So congratulations, you're prescient. That's why you write the columns and you're the contributor. But the reality is, and I think that on Nigeria as well. I mean, religious freedom, religious persecution. These are things that were not on my bingo card where President Trump was going to be leading on, and he is consistently, and that is not in sync with the isolationist or even to me, those who want to restrain Donald Trump in terms of the role of America in the world are going to lose.
100%.
Not to be restrained.
And they call themselves restrainers now, which is interesting. And it begs the question, who are you trying to restrain?
No.
The commander-in-chief, President Trump? So the restrainers are actually anti-MAGA. Because they are trying to restrict. First of all, MAGA is what Donald Trump says it is. And Donald Trump says it's blowing up Venezuelan gunboats, blowing up Iranian nuclear programs, blowing up the Houthis, and threatening and defending Christians in Nigeria. And if you're not on that train, then get the hell off.
Ron Kahn. Now we need to go to the history of here, Mark. This was something you surfaced in X. You'll be credited when the historians write the book on where Ron Kahn came from. They're going to go to Marc Thiessen. But give me a footnote here, huh?
Well, it was you and I came up with it over lunch one day. We're like, how do we brand the Reagan conservatives going forward? And we're Ron Kahns, and I think that the MAGA going forward, I think, are Don Kahns, and I think that Don Kahns and Ron Kahns have a lot in common.
The president certainly is enthusiastic. Seems to be for opportunities to align with President Reagan. Sometimes it lines up.
He's got a giant portrait of him sitting
accurately,
right
sometimes less accurately, but either way, the oval pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, 100%. And also keep in mind, adding to our list that we've been discussing, Trump has saved the NATO alliance. He got everybody except Canada to 2%. And Canada claims they'll be there sometime next year. We'll see. I doubt it, but everybody.
I think Spain's a problem too. But you're right.
But not on the. I don't think on the 2%. It's on the 5%.
5%. You're correct. That's right.
And now he's gotten the alliance to agree to raise it to 5%. Yeah. That was the biggest transformation of NATO in the history of it. And then on Ukraine, let's just review the bidding on where we are on Ukraine. We are in a better place than we ever were under Biden. So what has Trump done? First of all, he gave good 10 months for Vladimir Putin to get to the table and try and negotiate this. Probably longer time than some of us would have wished. Gave him every forbearance. But what is the Ukraine policy right now? Ukraine policy is he's taken the restrictions off of Ukraine using U.S. weapons inside Russia. Not only that, he's giving them targeting information to target the energy.
That's critical. I mean, you've been focusing on that for some time.
Yep. We're going into a military deal where we're going to buy drones from them, and we're selling them weapons, more weapons than Biden ever gave them. We're selling them through NATO, and he's and on top of that, I think we're going to get there to tomahawks eventually. But we're doing more for Ukraine right now than we ever did under Joe Biden, who was holding back all these weapons, who was slow rolling everything, and so even there. I think Vladimir
Putin. I mean, you've written and spoken about this. Vladimir Putin is perhaps maybe the most valuable player for delivering to Ukraine what it needs the most, because every time President Trump has sought to bring them to the table to negotiate,
Yep.
Vladimir doesn't does the opposite afterwards, and so
And I
he's
think
not
Ronald
gonna take
Reagan
it.
would have done the same thing that Trump is doing in trying to negotiate. I mean, keep in mind, like people criticized Ronald Reagan for on the right for spending so much time talking to Gorbachev, negotiating arms control deals, and all the rest of it. The big problem Trump has isn't the lack of willingness to negotiate; it's that he doesn't have a Gorbachev. He's got a Stalin,
And he held
that
off.
he's got to engage with.
He held off negotiating until he had a Gorbachev, and
Yep.
no, they were dying on him. Vladimir
Yep.
Putin
Yep.
is certainly say what you want about him. It doesn't look like he's dying anytime soon. Remains vibrant. Those are all great points in terms of how the Don cons, as you put it, and the Ron cons overlap. But we should return to where we are right now within the conservative movement. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, What the Hell podcast, with our, talking about, hey, these are people that are not part of the conservative movement. I mean, you said that, that actually you celebrate the conservative movement both now where we're responding to this, but also in the past for keeping the John Birch societies away, to make sure the anti-Semites and, are not part of the party. And this idea that there are no enemies on the right is anathema to where the conservative movement has been and should be.
No, it's right. So no enemies to the right is an adaptation of no enemies to the left from the French Revolution. And as conservatives, I did not know that our study of the French Revolution brought us to the conclusion that we should emulate the Jacobins. That was not a lesson of history that I took from the French Revolution. It was that the Jacobins were murderous thugs, and they were the precursors of the Stalinists and the Soviets and everybody else that we fought. So I don't believe in that. Number one, and here I think what's happening here is that the alt-right is getting scared. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to infiltrate our institutions and take them over from within so that they can control them and shape post-Trump conservatism and move it in a direction.
Do you think they feel they've lost Trump? Do you think they've lost Trump? I mean, I just saw President Trump an interview the other night on Laura Ingraham. It was quite telling. He said at least once, maybe twice, I started this thing, Make America Great Again. America first is mine. I decide what it is, what is not. And he seemed to be responding to this element. At least that's the way I heard it.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're trying to shape it after him because they see that there's 3.5 years. We're 3 years and 2 months away from the end of the Trump presidency, and despite the Trump 2028 hats that he sometimes hands out in the Oval Office, there's not going to be a Trump 2028 campaign. It's going to be somebody else, and they want to move. They don't like this conservative internationalism, this Reaganite leadership that Donald Trump is showing on the world stage, and they want to move away from it. But they can't attack Trump directly because that's suicide. And the Heritage Foundation has already gotten crossways with Trump over Project 2025. So they're trying to do it from within. They're trying to sort of infiltrate and take over these institutions. But what I am so encouraged by, Roger, is that the response. How many people have resigned from the Heritage Foundation? I mean, Chris DeMuth stepped down. All the people who spoke out against Kevin in that leaked
meeting.
Yeah, Robert Rector denounced him. And so many people. If you just go on X and look at Ben Shapiro and look at all these voices and former Heritage staff and everybody else speaking out, there has been a huge, huge, huge pushback, and it gets to something that's important. I've never seen this kind of pushback against anti-Semitism on the left. The difference, there's anti-Semitism on the left and on the right, but on the right, it's a fringe phenomenon. It's there's a reason they call themselves the alt-right, because they're not part of the right. They're the alt-right, And on the left, it's a elite mainstream phenomenon. It's in the halls of Congress with the Squad. It's in the elite universities. It's all over Harvard and Columbia and all these Ivy League schools. And it's in the mayor's office now in New York through Mondami's
election,
who was endorsed by Hakeem Jeffries. So for them, it's an elite phenomenon. And what these alt-right people are doing, these woke right, whatever you want to call them, they're trying to find their way into the tent. And what's happened is we've kept them out of the tent. Trump has kept them out of the tent. And Tucker just lifted the flap up and said, hey, Nick, come on in. Sneak in this way. You can get through the back door. The bouncer's not here.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
A bunch
I
of
agree
people
with
are
that.
saying no.
Yeah,
no, he's not allowed. Get him out.
It's an important distinction between the right and the left, conservatives and liberals, Democratic Party, Republican Party, is that Republicans have kept them out of elective office. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene she's just full-on anti-Semitic tropes.
Jewish space laser.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
But I do recall Steve King.
I think they might have space lasers because they have everything else. I'm not sure. I'm not sure she's wrong about that. If I was Hamas, I wouldn't be so sure that they don't have the space lasers.
Well, so that was not what she meant.
I know.
Right?
I know.
But you did have Steve King lose his committee assignments over this. I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene did as well for some time.
Yep.
And you're right, in terms of those in elective office of the Democratic Party, not only are they comfortable in the caucus, right, but that's where the energy seems to reside. And Mamdani is the latest example. But what we do have to acknowledge that Tucker Carlson is a force, and he's platformed Fuentes and others.
Yep.
And that's really where Heritage got in trouble. And, President Trump, he's had his interactions with, obviously, relationship with Tucker Carlson. The vice president has a relationship with Tucker Carlson. And President Trump calls him kooky, and for the most part is not engaged in this. But the platforming, the sort of nodding in agreement and no way challenging on the part of Tucker Carlson is a problem. And it just seems to have been the fury came when Kevin Roberts sought to say, hey, I'm Tucker's a friend of Heritage, and sort of couldn't see past that and what he was inviting and what he was doing. How do you think it all shakes out going forward?
Well, first of all, the importance of challenging it. First of all, the responsible voices on the right are challenging and pushing back, and Kevin Roberts is on the defensive over this and trying to save his job. And that's important because if we don't fight it, then we're going to become like the Democrats, where we allow the anti-Semites into our tent, and then we become captured by them and beholden to them the way the Democrats are. If you see the transformation of the Democratic Party on Israel, it's because they're afraid of losing those votes. And right now, what the Democrats have effectively done is traded the votes of moderate centrist Americans for radical anti-Semites on the left. And so the question is, do we want to make the same transaction on the right? Do we want to drive away moderate centrist normal people by embracing the Nick Fuenteses of the world? And if we do, we will rue the day as a party, as a movement. And so we've got to reject it.
As a country. I mean, this is, of course, anti-Semitism to the extent that it's embraced by a party, elective office, a government. It's the rotting out of the country itself. It's just a precursor to a country in decline that will defeat itself, and that's where the history goes. And you don't have to look beyond Nazi Germany in the 20th century to see just that. And those that challenge and defeat it ultimately prevail and realize prosperity and peace. But that is the fight. I agree with you. Take us through Israel and the discussion over Israel. I don't quite understand why people get tripped up about explaining why Israel is an ally of the United States. But it seems to be the sticking point when somehow someone wants to platform and legitimize a Tucker Carlson point of view. They are weighing, what's the interest or non-interest of the United States vis-a-vis its relation to Israel. It seems entirely obvious to me why.
I don't get it. Look, this is what I think the people on the right who are not pro-Israel don't seem to understand is that Israel is a stand-in for us. Okay, the Hamas is not about creating a Palestinian state. Fatah is, right. Hamas is a part of the same radical movement. You know, we had Habib Reddigur on our podcast right after October 7th, and he explained this to me in a way that has never left me. Hamas's ideology is not Palestinian statehood or Palestinian nationalism. They are part of the Al-Qaeda ideology, the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, the pan-Islamic ideology, whose goal is to take back all formerly Muslim lands and establish a caliphate that stretches from Spain to across the Middle East to Indonesia and beyond, right? And so for them, the reason they hate Israel beyond the anti-Semitism is it represents the West. It's the virus of Western democracy in the lands that they consider to be Muslim lands. And so that's why they're attacking Israel and why they want to destroy it. Because once they do that, then they come after us.
Yeah,
so what Israel is doing is not just defending itself. It's not just defending the Jewish people and the Jewish state. It's defending the West against radical Islamists whose goal is to conquer and destroy all non-believers, starting with the Jews and moving on to the rest of us. And we know they can reach us because they reached us on 9/11. So that's what we're fighting, and Israel supporting Israel is following the Reagan policy of the Reagan doctrine, which is you find allies around the world to fight your enemies for you. And all you do is give them intelligence and diplomatic support and weapons, and let them take all the risks and do most of the fighting, except when we have a discrete capability like the bunker busters to take out the Iranian nuclear program.
Oh, it totally fits within the Trump doctrine in terms of letting the allies lead, and the U.S. gives them support once the ally demonstrates its strength and engages in defending itself. But that's a security lens. There's a values lens. This is the democratic state in the Middle East, dependable, right? That
the only one
just don't have elsewhere in the Middle East. I mean, these are sort of things that are obvious, and of course, when you're dealing with people who are anti-Israel, they're just unwilling to hear it. But it's not hard. But here's an irony, and I want to get your reaction to this. So, just the other day, we had President Trump welcome the new leader of Syria into the White House, al-Shara. Okay?
Yep.
And I mean, this is just reflects the remarkable transformation in the Middle East since January, the impact of Israel strikes on Iran, the impact of Operation Midnight Hammer, right? We're seeing the fruits of that, where Shara comes to the White House because the traditional patrons of Syria, be it in Tehran or Moscow, they are no more. And because of American strength, because of Israel's strength, because of the weakness of those adversaries, he's got to come to the White House. And we could debate whether that was too quick or we need to know more about Shara, but it full-on reflects, in my judgment, Mark, a reflection of success of American strength, Israel's strength in the Middle East. And so at the moment that al-Shara is meeting with President Trump in the White House, and on the table is a discussion about whether Syria is going to go recognize Israel as a Jewish state, because that's what they're discussing. They're not there yet. Mm-hmm. We have the irony, progressives on the Democratic side, particularly Mamdani, who can't even accept that there should be an Israel that is a Jewish state. And then you have these anti-Israel, anti-Zionist forces on the far right. It's almost the virus that infected Hamas and they've lost now is infecting the West to the point that the leader of Syria is willing to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. It's sort of upside down.
Yeah. Here's a tip, a pro tip for our listeners, and I'm sure this doesn't apply to them, but maybe people they know. If you hate Israel and the Jews more than the former Al-Qaeda leader of Syria, you're an anti-Semite. How's that? Here's a pro tip for you.
There we go. That pretty much sums it up. That pretty much sums it. Yeah, that's a good way to kind of capture it. But it's unbelievable. I mean, it's really.
Yeah, and this is the same thing Reagan would have done. Look, Reagan. People forget this. Jean Kirkpatrick had her famous essay "Dictatorships and Double Standards," where she castigated the Carter administration for pushing away and undermining pro-American dictatorships around the world. It's like we had a broader struggle with communism, and sometimes we needed to deal with people and peel them off from the other side to support the United States. If Syria wants to become pro-American and develop a relationship, I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
I think that it's just former Al Qaeda is kind of like former Nazi.
Pictures of Al-Shabaab playing basketball with our commander of Central Command. That didn't show you that we've got a new friend and partner.
I saw it. But you know what? I don't necessarily care where his heart is. I care what his policies are, right? And so I'm skeptical that the tiger changes stripes or the leopard changes spots or whichever analogy you want to use. But look, if we can peel him away and pull him into, and he needs us, and we can make a transaction that will benefit his country and benefit us, then why not do it? And it's what Ronald Reagan would have done.
One other aspect, Mark, I wanted to get your take on in terms of what has happened on the far right and what we're seeing from Tucker Carlson is there's an intellectual breeding ground where this perhaps was an unintended outgrowth. And here I'm talking about not the Ron cons, not the Don cons, but the Nat cons, which these are the national conservatives. They were a group that really intellectualized much of what came out of President Trump's election in 2016. It's organizing in a thoughtful fashion the populist fervor that brought President Trump into office. And it's really grounded in nationalism, and as the name would suggest, in the NatCon, and the idea of focusing on sovereignty and immigration and many of the things that President Trump has emphasized. And there was a very thoughtful, I think, piece in the Journal recently by Jerry Baker, where he focuses in on this and highlights the right's emphasis through America First on nationalism. And he says it has its malignancies. National exceptionalism is easily interpreted as national supremacism, and even in a multi-ethnic country like the U.S., as ethnic supremacism. And I've always been uncomfortable with what Isaiah Berlin called nationalism the bent twig, because when it breaks, it unleashes toxicity. And I think we're seeing some of that right now. I think that was the thrust of what Jerry Baker was writing about. Give me your take on the place of nationalism within the conservative movement. Certainly, it's always been there. It could be quite a positive thing, but it can also be quite negative and harmful.
Yeah, so I'm all in favor of conservative nationalism and American nationalism, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Chris DeMuth, who's one of the leaders of the NatCon movement, just resigned from the Heritage Foundation over this. So the NatCons are not with Tucker and Fuentes, right?
No, of course not. I mean, Yoram Hazony is one of the, I think, is the founder of, right? And this is exactly. an American Israeli.
So here's the problem. Here's why I like conservative nationalism and why what's wrong with the alt-right in addressing it. So we are different. Nationalism gets a bad name because nationalism everywhere else, particularly in Europe, is based on blood and soil. Right? And so if you believe your country is superior, it's because your race is superior, and because your culture is superior, and because whatever other immutable characteristics that make you Hungarian, to pick a country out of a hat, right? Or make you that. And so when you say that your country is superior to other countries, it's because of things that are immutable characteristics to people that come from your land and are born in your land, have your blood, have your soil. American nationalism isn't based on blood or soil, but on an idea.
Exactly.
The ideas that are contained in our Declaration, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when we say that these ideas are superior to all other ideas ever conceived around which any country has ever been conceived, we're right. Those are the best ideas. Our nation is superior to every other country in the world because we conceived of those ideas. We put them into action at a time when everybody else was ruled by divine right of kings, and it's spread throughout the world. And why I haven't read Jerry's piece, so I don't want to particularly criticize him because he's 90% of the time and Jerry's right. But that's what European blood and soil nationalism is, an exclusive nationalism.
Yes.
Ours is an inclusive nationalism because anyone who signs up to those principles and those ideas can be an American and can partake in our nationalism, right? And what the Fuentes wing, the Fuentes Carlson wing of the party or the movement is trying to do is for European blood and soil nationalism on the American body politic. And so we are having a fight between two different kinds of nationalisms. And I'm all in favor of American nationalism. I am against European style nationalism because I think that's what our founders came here to reject.
Yeah, it's a good distinction.
And so, I'm inclusive, welcoming. Anybody can join. All you have to do is to subscribe to our creed. The big problem we have with immigration today, and we can see it in the protests, the pro-Hamas protests all over, and the movement that brought Mamdani is we've let a lot of people in this country who don't subscribe to our creed, who don't believe in the ideas of the Declaration.
It's what your colleague at AEI, Yuval Levin, talks about a covenant. Really, it's the people making a covenant with the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. Actually, there was to this point. I mean, I like that distinction. I do think, though, elements of the NatCon movement looked at American nationalism and exceptionalism in terms of ideas and the founding principles as not enough. I think there were elements of European nationalism that has filtered in and sort of.
Well, you know what? I mean, what they're frustrated with, a lot of the things that you see when you say, why do you love Hungary so much? Because a lot of the NatCons love Hungary. And it's not because they think Hungarians are superior. But it's not because they think Hungarians are superior to us or, in some way, and we all want to be, Hungarian. It's because pro-family policy, anti-LGBTQ and gender craziness, not bringing in a bunch of people who hate your country and allowing them in your borders. I get all that. I don't want that here either. And the problem, what's giving rise and fuel to the fire of this crypto European blood and soil nationalist movement in America is the excesses of the left. It's the culture of abortion on demand paid for by taxpayers up until the moment of birth. It's the gender ideology craziness. It's the looking around and seeing how many people we've let into this country and into our universities who hate America, who hate what we stand for, who don't share our ideals and our values. The end of assimilation, of making actually assimilation. I hate, all these people say you have to, my kids are all in college and you have to take a diversity requirement. It's like, I don't want diversity. I want unity.
A great construct.
Right?
Well, that's
I want the unity out of many one.
There's a construct from amazing rabbi who was involved with the Tikva Foundation, Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik. I don't know if you've interacted with him, but he has a construct of, I think it comes from, anyway, he calls it integration without assimilation. That's what we should be striving for. And that's really what the founders wanted. I don't know if you've seen, really to this point, there was a Turning Point rally with Vivek Ramaswamy, who's now, of course, running for governor of Ohio. And I think you and I would not have fans of the foreign policy he was advocating when he was running for president. But this was a great moment on stage where you had, I forget which university he was speaking at. It was a kind of typical Turning Point event. And the student was saying, how can we support you if you're a Hindu and you're not a monotheist? And in this student's mind, this Turning Point event was like, hey, it doesn't align with sort of our values. And Ramaswamy responded, I think, really well in two parts. One, he explained his Hindu practice, and one that he saw it as consistent with monotheism, which we kind of engaged him on the substance. But then he called him on stage. This is why I'm raising it, Mark. It's really a great moment. put it up on X. You should take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
He asked the student to read Article 6 of the Constitution, talking about the contract, right? Talking about which, of course, says that there is no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
Yep.
No religious test. And that in line, I thought was such a teachable moment, the sort of thing that should be happening at every student rally, whether it's Turning Point or any other goes on campus, because this student, out of ignorance or had been taught incorrectly, that there was a religious test for who we should be supporting for office. And they didn't realize that there was an article of our Constitution that addresses this directly.
Well, as a matter of law, there is no religious test, but I mean, some people might be might be more comfortable with someone for either of the more traditional Judeo-Christian faith, as a personal religious test, and want to, there may be I'm not sure that I want someone who subscribes to radical Islam to be president of the United States.
But it's not disqualifying if that's whatever, right? I take the point.
It depends on what the religion is and what the values it preaches are, and whether they're consistent with my Judeo-Christian view of the world. For my personal vote, doesn't mean that as a matter of law they should be barred, but as individuals, when we cast our ballots, we can have a religious test, because it's a religious test is a values test. And does this person's this religion inform values that are consistent with mine and what I want this country to be?
Well, of course, you always vote for the person who reflects your values.
Yeah. But I understand what you're saying.
As much. And it was there've been a lot of videos coming out of Turning Point rallies that weren't making you smile.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the video that's come out in the last week or so since this whole kerfuffle that made me smile is watching Charlie Kirk eviscerate Nick Fuentes.
Yes.
So embracing Tucker and Fuentes is a rejection of Charlie Kirk.
Oh, 100%. I'll tell you another person who I think has stood out admirably, stared down the hate, clearly articulated where conservative values are and are not, is Senator Ted Cruz.
Absolutely.
He's been very clear-eyed at this moment and has not for a second hesitated to make clear what is out of bounds.
Yep.
And particularly as it relates to Israel, but more broadly.
And how interesting that Tucker grilled him harder than he grilled Nick Fuentes. I think that tells you everything you need to know about Tucker Carlson.
That's a great point. Yeah, this is the softballs were not lobbed at the senator from Texas.
Yeah,
but he gave as good as he got for sure on that one.
Hey, can I make one other point on this whole? We should stop fighting amongst ourselves and fight the left, right? Which is the line we're getting from some of these people, who are defending Tucker and his engagement of Fuentes. Is number one, fighting neo-Nazis is not fighting amongst ourselves. That's point one. If Nick Fuentes is not your enemy, then you're my enemy. Mm-hmm. So that's step one. But I want to make an argument from if I can. I know you're an Orthodox Jew, and I'm a practicing Catholic. So I want to make an argument for this against this from Christian theology, if I can.
Please.
Right. So in the early church, after Christians believed that Jesus was crucified and rose from the dead, there was a debate among the disciples whether there were the Judaizers who said that Christianity was a Jewish sect, a Jewish religion, mm-hmm. and they should only stay in Israel and preach to the Jews. And there was St. Paul who went out and said, no, we are going to preach to the nations, right? And we're going to convert the Greeks and the pagans, right? And so the church decided in the Council of Jerusalem to go out and to follow Paul, who they believe was inspired by, struck from his horse by Jesus, blinded and healed, and go out and preach to the nations, right? And this is where we get this theology of evangelical Christianity, of evangelizing to the world. But at the same time, the early church was beset by heresies, right? So there were Gnostics, there were Arians. The Arians said that Jesus wasn't fully divine. The Donatists said that Jesus wasn't fully human. There were all sorts of different heresies that came up. And the early church fathers recognized that you could not preach the gospel of the good news of salvation to the world unless you were clear what you were teaching. And so they proceeded with a series of councils over the first couple hundred years of the church to have councils where they met and they declared anathema these different heresies, right? It's not inconsistent to go out and convert people, but to do that, you have to kick out the heretics. And Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes are the modern day Arians. They're the modern day Gnostics. They're the modern day Donatists. They're conservative heretics, and we cannot effectively preach the gospel of freedom and free enterprise and democracy and conservative values if we say things about conservatism that are wrong. Just like the Christians couldn't preach and spread the gospel if they teach things about Christianity that were wrong. So you have to, the key to spreading your ideas is to crush the heretics and to kick them out of the movement.
Well, it's beyond the pale. Yeah, there we go. We have.
You are declared anathema.
Super interesting analogy.
Excommunicated. And so we need to excommunicate Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and all the people who are out there preaching false teachings about what conservatism means if we want to effectively evangelize the world and lead the conservative movement. So if you're a Christian and you're out there saying no fighting amongst ourselves, we got to focus on the left, that's not what what Christianity teaches.
Well,
so you're wrong.
In this ecumenical moment on Reaganism, I defer to you as the authority on Christianity, and I think it's a good persuaded me an analogy here. And I think also our founding principles and documents, our Constitution, our Declaration, also have a framework for dealing with this, right? Which is engage in that speech and win the speech debate and persuade and engage. And maybe this will wrap up our conversation because you have done that. You consistently do it, Marc Thiessen, and we're grateful for it in being a leading RonCon here in D.C. and across the country.
We're going to make RonCon a thing.
Let's go. All right,
not
Marc.
like fetch. It's gonna happen.
All right, I can't wait. More on RonCon, future episodes. Marc Thiessen, thanks for being on the show.
Take care.